Welcome to Canusa Street, a podcast at the intersection of the issues and policies between Canada and the United States. Here are your hosts, Beth Burke and Chris Sands.
Hello, and welcome back to Canusa Street. I am Beth Burke with the Canadian American Business Council, joined by my wonderful, amazing co-host, Christopher Sands of the Woodrow Wilson Center. Hi, Chris. How you doing?
Hi, Beth. I'm doing great. I just got back from Winnipeg, so I'm feeling empowered.
Well, great. I'm really excited about our special guest today. We have a friend and someone who, like us, thinks about Canada, US all day, every day. So I am going to turn it over to you to give a proper introduction, but really excited about today's episode.
Sure. If Canusa Street had a mayor, it might be Ambassador Kirsten Hillman, because she really does live in this world. She served as ambassador to the United States here in Washington, D.C. since 2020, prior to which she was deputy ambassador and really involved in the negotiation of what we now think of as CUSMA or the USMCA, the agreement that updated and in some ways displaced NAFTA. Now, she's the first woman to be an ambassador of Canada to the United States and has stewarded the bilateral relationship through two administrations, the COVID-19 pandemic and the aforementioned renegotiation of our trade interests, our trade agreement. She's had a 25-year career with the Government of Canada and is not a career Foreign Service officer, but a career civil servant who has had various senior diplomatic, policy, and legal positions both at home and abroad for Canada. She's played critical roles, including as Canada's chief negotiator for the Comprehensive and Progressive Agreement for the Trans-Pacific Partnership, CPTPP. And prior to that, she practiced law at the Department of Justice in Ottawa and at a private law firm in Montreal. She grew up in Calgary and in Winnipeg, so my Winnipeg recent experience will be relevant, I'm sure, and holds a Bachelor of Arts from the University of Manitoba and a Bachelor of Civil and Common Law from McGill University and a Doctor of the Laws honoris causa from the Royal Military College of Canada. She's recognized in the Maclean's Magazine 2022 Power List, 50 Canadians who are forging paths, leading the debate, and shaping how we think and live, and has been named one of Washington's most powerful women by the Washingtonian magazine in both 2021 and 2023. Odd years? You're just as powerful in even years, I assure you. And here we are in 2024. Ambassador Hillman, welcome.
Thank you so much. Thanks, Chris. Thanks, Beth. It's great to be with you guys.
Well, we're really excited to have you. And as I mentioned, there are a few people who think about this relationship every minute of every day, but you are absolutely one of them. And there's a long list of items that we partner on, the US and Canada, and that we work through together. What do you see as one of the key areas of opportunity for us as we deepen and strengthen the relationship?
Well, that's a great question, and I'm really happy to be with you on this podcast. I'm a big fan. I enjoy listening while I'm, on my treadmill or walking through the neighborhood. So thank you for having me. We are in a particularly complex time in the world right now, and we find ourselves faced globally with a number of challenges and conflicts. And we look around the world and we see often countries live in neighborhoods that are dangerous for them, where their neighbors wish them ill or maybe do them ill. And what I say often to my team here, but to people that I meet on the Hill and across the country, is how incredibly fortunate Canada and the United States are not only to have each other as neighbors and obviously not wish each other ill, but quite the opposite. There's a broad and wide recognition across both countries that if one of us does well, the other does well, and that we are mutually supportive. So what I would say is, if you're to the question of what more we could do, where's the biggest opportunity for us? The biggest opportunity for us is in taking a minute to make sure that we don't take everything that we're doing together for granted, that we don't just say, okay, that's working well, so let's focus on the stuff that isn't working well. Let's take maybe 2% of the time that we spend focusing on things that are challenging and double down on this relationship and what's working well. And we can do it in every facet of the relationship. If it's the economy, if it's defense, if it's our energy relationship, our environmental cooperation, like you name it, there is room for us to take what's going well and make it better. So that's my sort of my mantra these days, frankly.
Absolutely. And sorry, Chris, I'm just going to jump in with one more right on the heels of that, because to that point, one of the things that I get asked everywhere I go is, do Americans care and pay attention? And, one of the things that I answer is actually a project that you really helped build, which is this bicameral, bipartisan congressional caucus called ACES, the American Canadian Economic Security Caucus. And I just want to take a minute because I think I wanted to give you the opportunity to talk a little bit about that, because I think it really speaks to your point of people not taking this relationship for granted and really learning the true depths of this interconnectivity like you just laid out.
Okay, so this offers me an opportunity to give your listeners just a little bit of a window into exactly sort of how that caucus came about, but an event that I think has informed our strategy and approach for at least a year and a half, 2 years now. So one of the founders and co-chairs of that caucus is Representative Amedee from Nevada. And Representative Amedee got a visit in his congressional district from our consul general who's responsible for that region a couple of years ago. And our consul general, Zaib Sheikh is his name, went in and brought him an award. And it was an award that he was giving out to commemorate not states, but congressional districts that were selling over $250 million a year into Canada. So he went and had this meeting. He talked to Representative Amedee. He described the scope of exports that Amadee's congressional district had to Canada and the number of jobs in his district that were tied to that economic activity. And the representative was like, I had no idea. I had no idea. This is a revelation to me. He promptly put up a Canadian flag in his congressional office. He promptly put up a Canadian flag in his Hill office and started the work to get this caucus going. And his theory and sort of driver was, sure, the northern border states, they probably are all fairly conversant with their relationship with Canada. But what about the rest of us who also have these economic security, energy, you name it, academic, student, tourism ties that we're just not really focusing on because we're focusing on other things because we find ourselves geographically maybe a little further away from Canada. That was his idea. And so we shared a lot of data with him about congressional districts across the country. And we started on this path of saying we need to get to every region of this country. We need to get all over this country and talk to the 70% of states in the United States that for whom Canada is the number one export market. And for those 30%, we're like number two. So we need to talk about that. And we also need to talk about the Canadian Armed Forces who are studying in all sorts of U.S. military colleges, who are doing joint operations with U.S. military in their homeland, in Canada. Like, we need to talk about our energy relationship. Like, we need to talk to folks, not just in Washington, D.C., Los Angeles, New York, but in Alabama and in Georgia and in Tennessee and in Florida and in Texas. And, and so that's what we're up to.
I love that story. Partly, I love the shout out to Zaib Sheikh, who's your consul general in Los Angeles, because some of our listeners will know he was one of the stars on Little Mosque on the Prairie and a very distinguished actor and a super nice guy. But also because it builds on something I want to ask you about, which is this sort of Team Canada approach. And you were really Captain Team Canada during the renegotiation of NAFTA, where Canada just, I think, knocked a lot of congressional offices back on their heels with a campaign that was all partisan. It was provinces, federal government, data-driven, saying, we're not asking you for something specific, but we want to tell you with the data, we're much more important to you than you think. And that changed dramatically for so many members of Congress, their attitude. And now as we're going forward with an American election and maybe a Canadian election next year, you're also captain of, or at least one of the co-captains of a new Team Canada that the Prime Minister set up to make sure that engagement is continuing. How's the new effort related to the old one, and how is it going?
Well, we're very busy. I can tell you that. My goodness, we're very busy. It is going very well. We have had close to 200 Team Canada, if you will, specific meetings. So let me define that. A Team Canada meeting is a meeting that either one of the co-leads or a minister or a parliamentarian or a premier or one of our consuls general or a business group, a Canadian has with their American interlocutor to talk exactly about what I was saying a minute ago about how Canada is a source of strength, not just for the United States, but for their particular industry, their particular community, their particular state, their particular university, like whoever your interlocutor is, Canada is a source of strength to them in achieving their goals. We make the United States more resilient, more prosperous, more secure, more innovative, all these good things that we know to be true, but we need to sort of dig down and provide concrete data and examples to prove it. So we've had, as I say, close to 200 meetings. We've been to more than half of the states in the United States since we launched this about 5.5 months ago. We've had all sorts of cabinet members engaged. We've had, I think, eight premiers to the United States. We've had parliamentarians. We've had from all parties. And then, of course, businesses and academics. So it's going really, really well. We're on the road. I'm on the road an awful lot, more than I've ever been before. Just a couple of weeks ago, I was in Philadelphia with the Prime Minister and then went off to Texas with Minister Ng. And those were two terrific meetings. And those two trips are quite, well, let me just tell you a little bit about them. In Philadelphia, we had meetings with the International Services Union, which is a binational Canada-U.S. union. We had meetings with all sorts of business leaders in Philly, and a smaller roundtable, and then a sort of a bigger discussion with the Prime Minister. We met the governor, we met the vice president, and so we had kind of all three sort of, what would you call it, all three legs of the stool that hold up an economic relationship. The workers, the businesses that create the jobs, and the governments that create, hopefully, the environment for a successful, prosperous economic partnership. And I was reflecting at the end of the day with the Prime Minister about how it was an incredibly powerful day because we heard from all of these three different communities of people that are deeply committed to the relationship, but each play a separate but essential role. So that was terrific. We had a lot of really, really good conversations there and got a lot of, I think, attention placed on this relationship. And then I went to Texas and met with a number of businesses there, as well as Governor Abbott. And the meeting with Governor Abbott was actually quite a model, I think, for what we are trying to achieve here. We went in to meet the governor, Minister Ng and I, with provincial representatives from Ontario, Quebec, and Alberta, with 5 Canadian businesses, of the 800, by the way, Canadian businesses that are present in Texas. And these 5 businesses alone represented $120 billion worth of investment in Texas, with more to come. And so what we did was we talked to the governor about, this is Canada. This is our provinces. This is our federal government. This is our business community. The Export Development Corporation was there. And we sort of opened the discussion, but then we let them talk about what Texas means to Canada and vice versa, and how, as I say, we support hundreds and hundreds of thousands of jobs in Texas. And when we left, and this is always a measure of success, I think, when you're trying to communicate something to someone, when we left, the governor mirrored back our points to us. And he summarized the meeting by saying, there is no question that the Canada-Texas relationship is essential for Texas in succeeding, in winning in the future. And I'm like, well, there you go. Now, if we could get every interlocutor that we have to internalize our messages in that way, then our project is succeeding.
Now, the first Team Canada was so essential while we were negotiating what's now CUSMA USMCA. Do you see this as having some knock-on benefits? Because 2026, we are going to have a review of USMCA CUSMA, and hopefully maybe some updates, et cetera, will come out of that, some positive conversation. But do you see this engagement as preparing the ground for what hopefully will be a fruitful conversation in a couple of years' time?
I think so. I mean, that would be terrific. I mean, ultimately, the project is about recognizing we are in a very complicated, volatile time. We need to be as resilient and strong and secure as possible. We need to double down on the relationships that are working well and understand the value of them, and to invest in those relationships and grow them. And together, Canada and U.S. are strong, resilient, prosperous, innovative, exciting regions. Probably the one that could be the most exciting region, anchoring the most exciting economic and innovation region in the world. That's what this is about, making sure that we're paying enough attention to it. But in so doing, of course, I think that creates a bit of an opportunity to also say, as this is going well, it behooves us who have a role in maintaining this stability and creating the right conditions for this excellent project to move forward, the Canada-US project, to be good custodians of that. So just maybe to speak more plainly, as we are doing this work, and as we create a joint commitment to the project of doubling down on this very successful relationship and growing it, I would think a corollary is that we develop a commitment not to disturb it, upset it, make it less effective. And so if there are times as we review the CUSMA, in the CUSMA review that's coming up, that we are looking to how to maybe make some changes, hopefully we're all aligned on making changes that make the relationship better and stronger and more predictable and more prosperous and more open and more transparent, and not go in the opposite direction, right? Mm-hmm. That's the goal.
Yeah, and I think you've raised this many times, but I feel like it's just in my blood. I cannot not bring it up. The partnership that the government has with the business community is so important. And, we at the CABC, the Canadian American Business Council, spend a lot of time thinking about ways that we can sort of prepare and be ready for the review as well, and be, aligning with creating the environment so that we can continue to prosper on both sides and have good, predictable, environment. What would you say either is the best, top priority that you see in place that the business community could be helpful, or how do you envision the next 2 years leading up to that with the business and government working together?
What I would say is this: the USMCA, the CUSMA, is a cornerstone of the Canada-US-Mexico relationship and has been for more than a generation. Through the updating that we did recently, we have brought it into sort of the modern times and made it even more effective in the framework that it provides for this economic relationship between our three countries. And that's not just rhetoric, that is a fact. Since that agreement came into force, the trade between Canada and the US, between Canada and Mexico, and between US and Mexico is at historic levels. It has never been higher in the history of our three countries. So that agreement is core to this unprecedented economic activity. It's not the only thing that led to it, but it is absolutely the foundation of it. So what I would say to the business community as we are moving towards the review is we must recognize that the agreement is excellent. It is working well. It is doing exactly what it was meant to do, which is create a stable, predictable, transparent, reliable, enforceable environment for trade between our three countries. Does that mean that maybe there are things that we shouldn't look at and say, hey, is there something more we could do? Are there new things that have emerged since it was negotiated that we want to think about? No, it doesn't mean we shouldn't talk about that. We should talk about anything anyone wants to talk about. It's partnership, and sharing our views and our perspectives is important. But we need to do so from a place of understanding, deep understanding and commitment to the stewardship of the relationship that is our responsibility. And that requires a commitment to, as I say, this open, transparent, and stable regime. So that is what I would say to the business community. I think the most important, there's many contributions that you can make, but I think a very important contribution is to say, this agreement is doing exactly what it was meant to do. And therefore, if we are going to look at it and review it, that's the starting point, right? It has to be the starting point.
Yeah. Well, this has been such a fabulous conversation. I know we could talk to you all day. And I feel like I have to end with one fun question. Canada Day is coming up. What are you doing? Are you doing anything fun? Like maybe having a party?
We will have a party. I have to tell you, I will be here at the embassy hosting a Canada Day breakfast, as I do every year. And it is one of my favorite things that we do. We do all sorts of things at the embassy, but I really, really enjoy it because I find what we try and do at our Canada Day breakfast is recreate what Canada Day feels like in Canada. So in Canada on Canada Day, most parks have like face painting booths and children have games that they can play, and you eat hot dogs and too much fried food and it's too hot and you're sticky by the end of the day. And, it's very family friendly and fun. So that's what we do. We have like little photo booths and we have funny hats and we try to recreate very much. It's not a posh affair. Let me just say. It is a family-oriented, fun event. We usually have some great music. We bring in a band from Canada, depending on the year, from different regions of the country. So we have that. Sometimes we even get kids up there dancing, which is always a pleasure. So that I look forward to it every year because it is really, to my mind, a real reflection of how we enjoy to spend Canada Day in Canada, which is just amongst ourselves as friends and family having a good time.
This last time, my wife convinced me not to wear a tie. I think I'd always worn a tie to these things. And the way you describe it, I should never have been wearing a tie. What was I thinking?
Well, thank you so much. It's always a good time spending time with you, Ambassador. Thank you for joining us here on Canusa Street. We hope to see you again soon.
Yes, come back anytime. Well, Kirsten Hillman has got to be one of the most natural Canusa Street residents. She works both sides of the street. She gets the Americans, she gets the Canadians, but she also brings them together. What a great conversation.
Just amazing. She really is all over the place. I have seen her in DC and in Canada and in all different parts, all different cities. She's really moving and grooving all over the place right now. And it's great. It's so important, like she said, to think about and highlight this relationship. And you're right. There's no one better. She's fantastic.
No one better. And I remember when, she had come in as deputy ambassador and there was this uncertainty, would they promote her to full ambassador? And having not been a full ambassador before in all of her different jobs, some question, was she the right person? Boy, has she proven any doubters wrong. She has been one of the most dynamic and exciting ambassadors I think Canada's had in Washington in in a long time. And that, with all due respect to her predecessors and so on, they're all friends of ours, but she's been pretty fantastic. And it's great to have her on Canusa Street.
Absolutely. And we look forward to having her back. Thanks for another great week, Chris. We'll talk soon.
That was another great week. Talk to you soon, Beth.
Bye-bye.
This podcast is brought to you by the Canadian American Business Council and the Wilson Center. If you like this episode, help others find our show and give us a rating on Apple Podcasts or Spotify.